I didn't tell the police everything the first time. I told them enough to make myself look stupid, not guilty. I told them about the Craigslist ad, the drive, the house, the smell, the blood in the basement, and how I ran. I told them I got scared and left my phone behind. I told them I panicked because I thought whoever lived there might come after me. That part was true. What I left out was why I answered the ad in the first place, why I stayed after the first thing that should have sent me back to my car, and what I saw at the end when I went back inside. I've had enough time now to understand that leaving pieces out didn't protect me. It didn't make me less involved. It just made me another person trying to stand a few feet away from something horrible and pretend I wasn't close enough to smell it. So this is everything. At the time, I was 26 and living in a one-bedroom apartment behind a tire shop outside Columbus. The place was cheap because the back wall sweated when it rained, and the toilet only worked right if you lifted the lid off the tank and adjusted the chain by hand. I had a job delivering restaurant supplies to diners and nursing homes. It paid enough for rent, gas, groceries, and almost nothing else. My truck had a transmission problem. My landlord had started adding late fees after the second of the month. My ex had moved out 6 weeks earlier and taken the microwave because her sister had bought it. I ate cereal with warm milk for 3 days because I didn't have the cash to replace it. That's the kind of place your head gets to when you start making bad decisions feel practical. The ad was under gigs, then labor, then moved around enough that I saw it 3 times in 1 week. It said, "Need one guy with truck or SUV, must be discreet, rural clean-out job, cash paid same day, heavy lifting, no questions." The amount changed in each post. First 600, then 800, then 1,200. The last one said 1,500 cash. 1 day only, serious replies only. There was no business name, no photos, just an email address made of random numbers, and a line that said, "Don't contact me if you talk too much." I knew it was shady. I didn't think murder. I thought stolen appliances, maybe clearing out a foreclosure before the bank changed the locks. Maybe some guy dumping construction waste on farmland. I told myself there were levels to bad, and I was probably only stepping onto one of the lower ones. I emailed from an old address I used for selling tools. I wrote, "I have a pickup, can lift, need the money." He answered less than 10 minutes later. "Tomorrow, noon. Don't bring anyone. Back into the drive. Stay off the front porch. If you bring a phone, leave it in your vehicle. Cash after the work is done." Then there was an address in a town I'd never heard of, about an hour and a half away. I almost backed out when I looked it up and saw nothing around it except fields and patches of woods. But I checked my bank account that night and saw I had enough for half a tank and some ramen. My landlord had taped a printed notice to my door that morning. Final warning before filing. I went. The drive out there felt longer than it should have. Once I got off the main highway, the roads got narrower and the houses spread out. I passed barns caving in on themselves, old tractors sitting dead in weeds, trailers with plywood over the windows. It wasn't the kind of middle of nowhere you see in movies with fog and crows and all that. It was worse because it looked normal for too long. Mailboxes, faded swing sets, a Dollar General, then less and less of anything until I could drive 5 minutes without seeing another car. The address brought me to a 2-story farmhouse set way back from the road. White paint, or what used to be white, peeling in long strips. The roof over the porch sagged. One upstairs window was boarded from the inside. There was a detached garage leaning to one side like a bad tooth. The grass had been cut recently near the house, but not farther out. The back field was shoulder high and pale from the heat. A dark blue van was parked beside the garage. No plates on it. That should have been enough. I remember shutting off the truck and listening for something. I don't know what. Machinery, maybe. Voices. Dogs. There was nothing except insects and the ticking under my hood. Then a man came around from the side of the house. He was in his 50s, maybe older, with a shaved head, hard belly, thick forearms, and a face so plain it took a second to remember it. No tattoos, no scars I could see. He wore jeans, work boots, and a gray t-shirt dark with sweat under the arms. He didn't smile when he got close. He looked at me like he was checking whether I matched an order. "You alone?" I said yes. "You got a phone on you?" I told him it was in the truck. He stood there for another second and then nodded toward the back. "Need a few things moved out of the basement. Into the van. Might take a couple trips. Don't go nosing around upstairs." I asked if he was paying cash like the ad said. He said, "You'll get paid if you work." Right away, I didn't like the way he talked. Not threatening exactly. Just flat, like he'd been having the same argument with people his whole life and was tired of it. I followed him behind the house. There was a cellar door built into a low concrete slope, both doors already open. A smell came out of it that stopped me before I got close. Wet dirt, mold, old meat, bleach. Not one thing. Layers. The man saw my face and said, "Pipes backed up in the spring. That's the smell." I said nothing. He went down first and I came after him into a basement lit by hanging bulbs and one small window near the ceiling crusted with dirt. It wasn't finished. Just concrete floor, cinder block walls, workbench, shelves, upright freezer, rusted sink. At the far end, there were 3 large plastic storage bins with lids snapped on. Beside them stood a dolly and a stack of folded tarps. He pointed at the bins. "Those go first." They looked heavy but not impossible. The plastic was cloudy and scratched, the kind people use to store Christmas decorations in a garage. One lid had duct tape around it. I bent to get a grip and noticed the bottom edge of the bin was stained brown-black along one side. I straightened up and looked at him. "What's in them?" He had already turned toward the stairs. "Junk from the house." He didn't look back. I should have walked then. Maybe he would have let me. Maybe not. I've replayed that moment so many times it doesn't feel like memory anymore. It feels like a test I kept failing. Instead, I told myself it was animal meat. Deer, maybe. A gross clean-out job. $1,500 for one day of not asking questions. That was the deal. I wrapped my hands around the first bin and lifted one end. It was heavier than it should have been. There's a difference between dead weight and awkward weight. This had both. Not shifting exactly, but dense in the middle in a way that made my stomach tighten before my brain caught up. I got it onto the dolly and started rolling it toward the stairs. The man came back down, took the front end without a word, and together we bumped it up the steps and out into the sun. He walked it to the van, opened the side door, and I saw plastic sheeting on the floor inside, stained and wrinkled. A bottle of cleaner rolled in one corner. We slid the bin in. The second one was worse. Halfway across the basement, the lid flexed with a muffled thump from inside. I froze. The man didn't. "Keep going," he said. I looked at him so fast I almost hurt my neck. Something moved. "Air pocket shifted," he said. "Stop dragging ass." His voice changed just enough for me to hear the threat under it. I got the second bin to the stairs, but I didn't go up right away. I pretended to adjust my grip and listened. Nothing. Then from inside the bin, very faint, like from deep under blankets, I heard a sound that might have been a cough. That was when something in me finally started screaming to get out. Not curiosity, not concern, pure animal fear. I dropped my end. What the hell is in there? He stepped down one stair toward me. A woman's scarf was tucked into his back pocket, balled up with something dark stiff on one corner. At the time, that detail lodged in my head for no reason. I think the mind grabs whatever it can when it doesn't want to see the whole thing. He said, "Pick it up." I didn't move. He came down another stair. "Pick it up and finish the job." I said I was leaving. Then he moved faster than I expected for a man his size. He got one hand on my shirt and shoved me hard enough that I hit the cinder block wall with my shoulder. Before I could get my balance, he had a hammer in his other hand. I don't know where he pulled it from. Maybe the stairs. Maybe his waistband. I only saw it when it was already coming at my face. I jerked sideways and it smashed into the wall where my head had been. Concrete dust burst against my cheek. I grabbed his wrist with both hands and we slammed into the dolly. It tipped over. The bin hit the floor so hard the lid popped loose on one corner. A smell came out that I still catch sometimes in my sleep. Rot and shit and blood that had gone sweet. And through that opened corner I saw hair. Dark, wet-looking hair plastered to skin. I let go of him. That was almost enough to get me killed. He swung the hammer again, caught me behind the ear, and white light went across my vision. I went to one knee. He grabbed my collar and tried to pull me toward the open bin, maybe to get me down where he could hit me again. I shoved both hands into his chest and kicked at his leg. My boot slipped on something slick. He stumbled backward, one foot landing on the loose lid, and his balance went out from under him. He crashed down hard, and the hammer skidded across the floor under the workbench. I ran. I got up the stairs so fast I nearly fell forward into the yard. I heard him behind me, one hand slapping the steps as he dragged himself up. I cut around the corner of the house instead of straight to the truck, because panic makes you stupid in ways that are hard to explain later. I think I wanted distance, cover, anything that wasn't a straight line with my back exposed. The side yard was cluttered with junk. Rusted mower deck, pallets, broken chairs, old sink, stacks of tires. I hurdled a bucket and almost went down on wet grass. Behind me, he yelled something I didn't catch. When I looked back, he was coming around the corner with blood on the side of his head and no hammer. His face had changed. The blankness was gone. He looked insulted, furious, like I had broken some small social rule. I reached the front of the house and saw another man standing by the porch. For a second, I thought maybe I had a chance. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe somebody who didn't know. Then I saw the shotgun. He was older, skinny in a bent, yellowed way, with white stubble and deep lines around his mouth. Coveralls, mud on the knees. He held the gun low, not aimed, which made it worse. He looked like he had all day. I stopped so hard my heel slid in gravel. The first man yelled, "Get him!" The old man raised the shotgun. I ran the other direction. There was no plan left by then, just movement. I cut wide around the driveway, away from my truck because the old man was between me and it. The field behind the garage was rough and uneven and grabbed at my boots. Tall grass slapped my legs. My head was ringing from the hammer blow. I remember thinking in a detached, stupid way that I should have stretched before driving out there because my hamstrings felt tight. I heard the truck door open behind me, and then a shotgun blast. The sound tore through the field. Something hit the dirt to my left with a spray of soil. Birdshot or buckshot, I didn't know. I dove behind a round bale and kept low. Another blast came, farther off. They were trying to flush me out or scare me away from the road. It worked. I turned toward the woods instead. The field dipped near a drainage ditch choked with weeds. I jumped it badly, landed shin first in mud, and crawled up the bank on my hands. By the time I hit the trees, my breath was gone, and my stomach was trying to come up. I pushed deeper anyway, through thorn bushes and fallen branches, hearing them in the field behind me. People think woods are quiet. They're not. Everything snaps, scrapes, rustles. Every step sounds like somebody else following you. I kept waiting for the old man to fire again, but after the second shot there was only shouting. The words carried strangely through the trees. I heard my own name once and realized the first man must have seen it on something in my truck. That scared me in a new way. I crouched behind a fallen tree and tried to listen without breathing. My truck keys were still in my pocket. My phone was in the cup holder. Wallet too. I had run from the one thing I needed. The smart thing would have been to keep moving and find another house, another road, anybody. But I had no idea where I was, and blood was trickling warm down my neck into my collar. My hearing on one side came and went in a dull wave. I kept thinking about the bin, the hair, the sound from inside. There was someone alive in that basement. Or there had been. I stayed in the woods longer than I should have. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe more. Long enough for the first bolt of panic to flatten into a bad, trembling logic. 2 men, 1 gun, maybe another weapon, my phone in the truck. If I kept running blind, I might end up on another part of their property or collapse in a ditch. If I circled back carefully, maybe I could get to the truck while they were searching the woods. It sounds stupid now. It was stupid then. But fear narrows things. You don't weigh options. You latch onto one that looks less impossible than the others. I moved parallel to the tree line until I could see the back field through gaps in the brush. The van was still by the garage. My truck sat where I'd left it. Driver door hanging open. Nobody near it. I couldn't see either man. I crouched there for a while watching. Flies buzzed around my face. Sweat ran into my eyes. No movement. Then I heard something from the basement side of the house. A scream. Not loud. Not movie loud. It cut off too fast for that. More like someone waking from a nightmare and getting a hand over their mouth before the sound was finished. My body reacted before my head did. I started toward it. I wish that part wasn't true. I wish I could say I went back because I was brave or because I wanted to save somebody. The real reason is uglier and more confusing. I think the scream made the whole thing impossible to leave behind. Up until then, some part of me had still been trying to turn it into a misunderstanding, a bad job, a nightmare that would get smaller once I reached a gas station and called 911. That sound made it real. So I went back. I kept low behind the garage and found a side door hanging off one hinge. Inside smelled like oil and mouse droppings. There were shelves of jars full of screws, an engine block on a stand, 2 shovels, a chain, and a red fuel can. I took the shorter shovel because it felt easier to swing in close quarters. I know how that sounds now. Like I was gearing up. Like I was choosing to be part of it. Maybe I was. I stepped out and moved along the rear wall of the garage until I could see the cellar doors. One was partly closed. I heard voices below. The younger man and the old one. Not arguing. Talking the way people talk over a repair. Told you not to bring strangers. Had to get the freezer out somehow. Should have shot him cleaner. Then a dragging sound. Then the younger man said, "She's done." The old man answered, "Check the other one." I don't remember deciding to go down there. I only remember being at the doorway, shovel slick in my hands from sweat, looking into the dim light. The younger man had his back to me. He was bent over one of the bins. The lid was fully off now. The old man stood near the stairs to an inner room I hadn't seen before, a narrow space behind a hanging tarp. He was holding something long and silver. At first I thought another gun. Then I realized it was a captive bolt stunner, the kind used on livestock. There was blood on the tarp, fresh enough to shine. On the floor beside the open bin lay a woman in a blue shirt and jeans. Her chest wasn't moving. One arm was bent underneath her. Her face was turned away, but I could see dark blood sprayed across the concrete near her head. The younger man looked up at the old one and said, "She bit me." The old man said, "Then quit whining and check the other one." That was when I swung the shovel. I brought it down as hard as I could on the younger man's neck and shoulder. The sound was dull and meaty, not at all like in movies. He went to one knee with a choking grunt. I swung again before he could turn. The edge caught the side of his head. He fell against the bin and rolled, hands grabbing blindly for me. The old man moved fast, faster than the other one had. He came at me with the bolt gun held out like a punch dagger. I jabbed the shovel handle toward him and he knocked it aside. The metal tip clipped my ribs, and I felt a hard impact that seemed too small to matter at first. Then heat spread under my shirt. He had fired it. The bolt didn't go deep because the angle was bad or because it struck a rib. I don't know. But it punched through flesh and knocked the breath out of me. I staggered back into the wall. He fired again and the gun clicked empty. I hit him with the shovel handle, both hands, straight across the mouth. Teeth flew. He fell sideways into the workbench. I dropped the shovel and grabbed the hammer from under the bench where it had slid earlier. He tried to stand and I hit him once in the forehead. He sat back down hard without meaning to. I hit him again, then again. People imagine rage is hot. Mine felt cold and clean. His face caved in by pieces. Forehead first, then nose, then one eye going wrong in the socket. He put his hands up after the second blow, not to fight, just to cover himself, and I kept hitting until one hand snapped backward and stayed that way. When I stopped, the hammer was slipping in my grip. The younger man was still alive. He had crawled halfway toward the stairs, leaving a smear. One side of his skull was split open under the ear, and he was making a wet, sucking noise. He reached out with one hand, palm opening and closing. Not at me exactly, just into space. I walked over and hit him in the back of the head. It took 3 more swings. After that, the basement was quiet, except for my breathing and a dripping sound from somewhere I couldn't place. I wish I could tell you I threw up or broke down or dropped the hammer in disgust. I didn't. I stood there panting and felt the ugliest kind of relief. They were down. That was all my body cared about. Then I heard movement behind the tarp. I pulled it aside. The room beyond had once maybe been for canning or storage. No windows, bare bulb overhead, floor drain in the center, hooks screwed into ceiling joists, a stained mattress against the wall, a folding chair, a table with zip ties, duct tape, bottles of bleach, latex gloves, and a box of contractor bags. There were 2 women inside. One was tied to a support post with an extension cord wrapped around her chest and wrists. She looked about 19, maybe younger. Her left eye was swollen shut and her lip was split. She had no shoes on. Her feet were black with dirt. The front of her shirt was soaked dark from where she'd been crying or sweating or both. The other woman was on the mattress, half on her side, knees pulled up. She was older, maybe 40, with short blonde hair matted to her face. At first I thought she was dead. Then I saw her blink. The girl by the post stared at me and started trying to speak through a gag made from a dish towel. The sound that came out was raw and desperate. I cut the cord with the utility knife from the table. My hand shook so badly I nicked her wrist. She didn't seem to feel it. The second the gag came out, she started screaming to get us out. Get us out. There's another one upstairs. That sentence sits with me more than anything else. There's another one upstairs. I told her to stay there a second and moved toward the stairs, but the older woman on the mattress grabbed my pant leg weakly. Don't leave me. Her voice barely came out, so I didn't. I helped the girl untie the older woman. She couldn't stand. Something was wrong with one leg, broken or cut up badly under the jeans. There was dried blood all down the inside seam. On the table beside the bleach, I saw a pair of pruning shears with tissue caught near the hinge. I looked away from them and said we were leaving now. The girl kept talking in quick bursts, the way people do when they're coming apart but trying to stay useful. She said she answered an ad for a nanny job. The older woman came for a house cleaning gig. There had been another woman before them, a redhead, maybe dead now, maybe upstairs. The men had phones in a kitchen drawer. The old one liked to make them record messages home saying they'd left town with some guy. She was crying so hard she hiccuped between words. I asked how long they'd been there. She said she didn't know. We got to the basement stairs and heard a noise above us. Footsteps on the first floor. Not one of the men. Wrong rhythm. Lighter. The girl clutched my arm hard enough to hurt. He has a son, she whispered. I stared at her. What? Lives upstairs sometimes, she said. Please. That changed everything again. I went up 2 steps and looked through the gap at the top. The kitchen was visible from there. Yellow cabinets, old linoleum, a table with 1 chair knocked over. A dog lay on the floor near the sink, dead and stiff, belly bloated. Flies moved over its eyes. Beside it sat a cardboard box full of women's purses. Then a shadow moved past the doorway. I pulled back. How old? She said maybe 30. So not a boy. A man. There was a long pause where none of us moved. The older woman was leaning against the wall, trying not to collapse. My side was burning now, and my shirt felt wet. I knew I was bleeding more than I wanted to admit. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. I should have taken them out through the cellar doors right then and run for the woods or the road or anywhere. But I thought about the truck, the phones, the chance of another weapon waiting outside, and maybe most of all, I thought about leaving someone behind if there really was another woman upstairs. So I made one more bad choice. I told them to stay low in the basement while I checked the kitchen for the phones and the way out. I gave the girl the hammer. She looked sick holding it. I went up slowly, one step at a time. The kitchen smelled worse than the basement in a different way. Old grease, dog shit, stale air, rot from the dead animal. The sink was full of black water with dishes soaking in it. The counter held a stack of paper plates, a coffee tin full of cigarettes, and a revolver. I grabbed the gun. I've only fired handguns a few times. My uncle had a .38. He let me shoot into a hillside when I was a teenager. This one looked similar. Heavy, 6 rounds maybe. I checked the cylinder the way I half remembered and saw brass. Loaded. The footsteps came from above me, from the second floor landing. "You can come down now," a voice said. Young voice. Calm. I looked up and saw him leaning on the banister. The sun. He had brown hair, glasses, and a narrow face with skin broken out along the jaw like a teenager, except he was definitely not a teenager. Late 20s, early 30s. He wore a green polo shirt tucked into jeans and house slippers. In one hand he held a kitchen knife. In the other, by a fistful of hair, he held the head of a woman. Not just the hair, the whole head. Freshly cut. The neck ragged and dark, mouth hanging open. For a second I thought my brain had snapped and turned the whole scene unreal to protect itself. But no, I could see drops sliding off the chin onto the stair tread beneath him. He looked down at me with the mildest expression I've ever seen on a human face. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said. Then he tossed the head down the stairs. It hit once, twice, then rolled into the wall near the bottom. The eyes were open. Red hair stuck to one cheek. I fired the revolver without aiming. The shot blew a hole in the ceiling over the landing. He ducked and ran back into the hallway. I went after him. I don't know why. Maybe because I thought if I let him get out of sight, he'd come back with another gun. Maybe because by then the line had been crossed so far behind me, I couldn't think in normal terms anymore. The upstairs hallway was narrow and hot. Doors on both sides. Wallpaper peeling in long curls. Family photos on the wall. Most turned face down or cracked. The son ran into the front bedroom and slammed the door. I hit it with my shoulder. It held. I stepped back and kicked near the knob. The wood split. Inside the room were 2 twin beds without sheets, stacks of clothes, a TV on the floor, and a smell like pennies and mildew. He came at me from behind the door with the knife. I fired again and missed. The sound in that little room was huge. He slammed into me before I could pull the trigger a second time, and we went down against one of the beds. The knife went into my forearm instead of my chest because I got my arm up. I felt it slide in. It was less sharp pain than pressure, then heat. He was stronger than he looked. His glasses flew off and skidded under the bed. Up close I could smell soap on him, clean laundry, something ordinary that made the whole thing worse. He kept saying, "You ruined it. You ruined it." Like I had interrupted a dinner party. I got the revolver jammed between us and fired into his side. He made a sound like all the air left him at once, but he didn't stop. He stabbed again, caught my shoulder, and then I remembered the bolt gun wound in my ribs and twisted hard with it, using the pain. We rolled. The knife came loose from my arm. I hit him with the revolver across the mouth and teeth came out. He grabbed my wrist with both hands, trying to turn the barrel away. I shot him in the face. I can still see the back wall after. Not because it was dramatic, because it was practical. A flat spray of blood and pale matter across yellow wallpaper with little sailboats on it. A child's wallpaper. Or maybe he'd just never changed it. He fell sideways off me and twitched once. Then that was done too. I stood up and nearly blacked out. My arm was pumping blood. I wrapped it with a pillowcase from the floor and staggered into the hallway. One room at the far end had the door partly open. Inside, tied to a radiator with an orange extension cord, sat another woman. At least that's what I thought until I got closer. It was a body. Not fresh. Not old, but far enough gone that the skin had darkened at the lips and fingertips. The cord had cut into the wrists. The chest had been opened from collarbone to stomach and sewn back together with black twine like someone practicing. There was a camera on a tripod facing the chair. That finally broke something in me. I backed into the hall and bent over, dry heaving. Nothing came out. My stomach had gone empty hours earlier. I wiped my mouth and went downstairs. The girl and the older woman were at the kitchen doorway staring at the head on the floor. Neither had moved. I told them we were leaving now. We got outside through the front door. The light hit us, and for one stupid second the world looked too normal to hold what was inside that house. Blue sky, gravel, a tire swing hanging from a dead branch. The girl started for my truck, but the front tire was flat to the rim. Both front tires, actually. Slashed. I said we'd take the van. The keys were not in it. That's when the older woman, who had barely spoken since we found her, looked toward the road with this hollow expression and said, "He called someone." At first I didn't understand. Then I heard the engine. A vehicle turning onto the gravel drive from the road. A brown pickup came toward the house, slow and steady. A man sat behind the wheel, another beside him. Not uniforms, work clothes. One cigarette hanging out the driver's mouth. Family? Friends? Buyers? I didn't know and didn't wait to find out. I got the women moving toward the field behind the garage. The older one could barely put weight on her leg. The girl had to help me carry her half between us. My vision kept dimming around the edges. I looked back once and saw the brown pickup stopping near the porch. One of the men got out and looked at the open front door, then at the cellar doors, then toward us. He didn't shout. He just raised a rifle from the truck rack like he had expected a mess and had come prepared for the kind. We made it maybe 30 yards. He fired. The girl jerked beside me and went down so hard she pulled me off balance. At first I thought she had tripped. Then I saw the back of her shirt opening red under the shoulder blade. She made this stunned little sound, not even a scream. Just surprise. I dropped with her. The older woman fell too and started crawling on elbows toward the weeds, dragging the bad leg behind. I remember grabbing the girl's face and telling her to get up. Her mouth worked, but no words came. Blood bubbled at the corner. Her eyes were wide and furious, as if I had lied to her personally. I fired the revolver toward the driveway until it clicked empty. I don't know if I hit anyone. The rifle fired again. Dirt kicked up near the older woman's hand. She kept crawling. I stood because there was nothing left to do except make them shoot at me instead. I took 2 steps toward the driveway, waving the empty revolver, and the world tilted. My legs folded. I went down on one knee in the grass. What happened next comes in pieces. The men from the pickup moving closer. One of them laughing. The older woman screaming something from the weeds. A different sound from the road, fast this time, engine pushed hard. Then another gunshot, sharper than the rifle. A county sheriff's cruiser came fishtailing into the drive with lights on and clipped the rear corner of the brown pickup hard enough to spin it. Doors flew open. More shots. Someone yelling commands. Somebody else running for the house. I didn't call them. I still don't know who did. Maybe a neighbor heard the shotgun earlier. Maybe somebody saw the Craigslist posts and had already made a complaint. Maybe it was random luck. The kind that comes so late it hardly counts as luck at all. I passed out before I saw how it ended. When I woke up in the hospital, there were deputies outside the room and a detective waiting with a notebook. My arm had stitches. So did my side. My head was bandaged. They told me the old man was dead in the basement, the first man too, and the son upstairs. One of the men from the brown pickup had been shot by deputies while running from the garage. The other was in custody. The girl died before the helicopter got there. The older woman lived. The house gave them enough evidence to dig through 2 counties and 3 states. Missing women mostly, though not only women. Some from Craigslist jobs, some from dating sites, one from a bus station, one whose car they found abandoned behind a motel almost 4 years earlier. There were tapes, photos, ID cards, jewelry sorted in tackle boxes, burn pits on the property, bones in a pond out back weighted with cinder blocks. It was bigger than I understood while I was in it, which somehow didn't make it feel less personal. It just meant more people had walked into that place for money, or work, or a place to stay, and met the wrong face at the wrong door. The police were interested in me for a while, and I can't blame them. My fingerprints were everywhere. 3 of the dead had my blood on them. I had answered the ad. I had stayed. I had killed 2 of them with a hammer and 1 with a gun. They asked why I went back into the house after escaping. They asked why I didn't drive off the second I saw something wrong. They asked why I lied at first about carrying the shovel and hitting the man in the basement. The honest answer to all of it is that I don't fully know. I know I needed money. I know I ignored my own instincts because I was ashamed of being broke and tired of feeling cornered by ordinary life. I know that once I realized what was happening, part of me wanted to get away, and another part wanted to see it through. Maybe because walking out would have meant living forever, with the sound from that bin in my head. I know also that there were moments in that basement when hurting them felt simple. That part bothers me most. Everyone wants survivors to come out clean. Scared, yes. Traumatized, yes. But morally intact. They want you to say you did what you had to do and then collapsed into the arms of the state, grateful and horrified and basically the same person. That didn't happen to me. I did what I had to do, and something in me answered it too easily. The detective told me I wasn't being charged. self-defense, defense of others. He said I probably saved lives by going back in. He said people online would call me a hero once the story broke. I asked him not to let my name out. He said he'd try. But once things got filed, there was only so much he could do. He was right. My name leaked. Then my address. Then a picture of me from an old Facebook account. Reporters called. People I hadn't spoken to since high school sent messages saying they always knew I was tough, or crazy, or both. A local news station ran a segment with my apartment building in the background. The tire shop owner asked if I could use a different entrance because cameras were bothering customers. I moved within a month. You'd think that would be the end of it. Bad place, dead killers, case closed, live with the scars. It wasn't. The older woman, the one who survived, never spoke to me directly again. Through a victim advocate, she passed along thanks, and then later asked that I never contact her. I understood. I never tried. But about 6 months after the trial for the last man from the pickup, I got a packet in the mail with no return address. Inside were printed screenshots of Craigslist messages. Not the ad I answered. Older ones, different cities, same wording, slightly changed each time. Need one guy with truck. Need a strong man for farm work. Need discreet help moving furniture. Cash same day. Some went back years. At the bottom of the stack was a note written in block letters. Not all of them were at the house. That was it. No signature, no explanation. I brought it to the detective. He looked tired when he saw me. He said they already knew the family had used multiple properties and borrowed land from relatives over the years. They were still investigating old disappearances, still digging. He told me not to read too much into anonymous mail. Maybe he meant to reassure me. It didn't, because by then I was already seeing the ad again. Not the exact same one. Similar. Different emails. Different towns. Same stripped-down tone. Same promise of cash for hard work, privacy. No questions. I reported everyone I found. Sometimes the listing was gone before anyone answered me. Sometimes the police said it traced to a library computer or a prepaid phone with nothing useful on it. Once they asked me to ignore it unless they contacted me for a sting. They never did. A year later, the old farmhouse burned down during a storm. Electrical, they said. But the power had been cut after the case. There shouldn't have been anything live in that place. A deputy died in the fire searching for evidence that had supposedly already been removed. After that, nobody wanted to talk to me about loose ends. So I tried to stop looking. I changed cities. New job. New apartment. Then eventually a house. I stopped drinking because it made the dreams worse. I stopped sleeping well anyway. Some mornings I woke up convinced there was bleach in the air. Sometimes I'd hear a plastic lid flex under pressure, and my whole body would lock. There are scars on my arm, shoulder, ribs, and scalp. Those I can explain to people. What I can't explain is the other thing. The feeling that part of my life still belongs to that basement. Like I walked out with something attached to me. Not a ghost. I don't mean it in a supernatural way. I mean a practical human stain. The knowledge that there are people who do things like that in ordinary houses under ordinary sky, and that they find each other, help each other, marry, have sons, feed dogs, pay utility bills, post ads online. The knowledge that once you've seen how organized evil can look, you start noticing little systems everywhere. 3 weeks ago I saw a new listing. Rural cleanup. Cash. Need one man only. Different state this time. Not close, but not impossibly far either. I sent it to the old detective's email and got an auto reply saying he had retired. Then yesterday someone rang my doorbell just after dark. By the time I got to the window, there was nobody on the porch, only a cardboard box. Inside was my old wallet, the one I left in the truck at the farmhouse. The police gave me back a lot of things after that case. Keys, phone, watch, belt. They told me the wallet had never been recovered. But there it was on my porch, warped from age and stained darker around the edges. Inside, everything was gone except my driver's license and a folded piece of yellow paper. On the paper, in neat handwriting, were 6 words. You still owe for the job. I called the police. They came, took the wallet, took the note, asked the usual questions. Porch camera? No. Enemies? Not that I knew of. Had anyone from the case ever contacted me? Not directly. The younger officer tried to be polite about it, but I could see the doubt on his face. Old trauma, maybe a prank, maybe somebody online messing with the famous survivor. He didn't know the details. To him, it was just a strange note. To me, it was a hand on the back of my neck. I barely slept last night. Every sound outside made me sit up. Car door, wind in the trash cans, somebody walking a dog on the sidewalk. This morning I went onto Craigslist for the first time in months. There was a new ad posted in my city. Need someone with a truck for local cleanout. Cash tonight. Must come alone. No questions. There was a photo this time. Just one. The inside of an upright freezer. Empty except for a roll of duct tape and, set neatly in the center like a joke, my apartment key. I haven't told anyone that part yet. The police are already on their way because I called after I saw it. Maybe they'll trace it. Maybe this time they'll take it seriously fast enough. Maybe this ends with paperwork and tired men in windbreakers and some coward in handcuffs pretending not to know what any of it means. But I don't think so. I'm writing this at my kitchen table with every light in the house on. I dragged the couch in front of the back door an hour ago. I have a different gun now. Legal. Loaded. Sitting beside this laptop. I checked the windows 3 times. The ad is gone already. My key is still in that freezer photo in my head. Bright brass against white metal. There's a car parked across the street that I don't recognize. It's been there long enough for the engine to cool. No one has gotten out. A little while ago, I heard something in the side yard, close to the fence. Not loud. Just the soft scrape of plastic being pulled over concrete. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was the trash can lid shifting in the wind. Maybe the police will arrive before I finish this, and I'll feel stupid for putting it all down like some confession nobody asked for. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think there were more of them than anyone ever proved. I think somebody kept my wallet for all these years. And I think the only reason I'm still alive is that they wanted me to know they hadn't forgotten. There's someone on the porch now. I can see the shadow under the door. They haven't knocked. They're just standing there. I'm going to take the gun and look through the peephole. If this file stops here, that means I was right the first time. The job was never finished.